What's happening, everybody? What is it today? It's actually my sister's birthday. Happy birthday, Yvette. Yeah, Tuesday, July 28th. First of all, right off the bat, rest in peace, Vernon Forrest. That's another loss. Wrong places, wrong time. Two guys just basically jacked him while he was putting air in his tire and then put 7 slugs in him. The shit is just ridiculous, man.
2 wasn't enough.
Yep, I told you, Grim Reaper, man. He started to work shit out with his girlfriend and she just said fucking him out and he just fucking acted up. And everybody was laughing at me about the shit. You know?
For all you people who watched our clip last week, no sooner did we get the clip up than Affliction went in the tank.
Yeah, we shot the clip and literally 3 hours later it was released that Josh Barnett had yet failed another steroid test, making it his 3rd steroid test. He actually has failed 2 that meant anything, but his initial one he failed was in 2001. I mean, I love Josh Barnett. I thought he was a guy that really would give Fedor a chance, but the guy could not just stay off the sauce to fight, and it just took a whole company down with him to some degree.
And Affliction really got in over their heads, I believe, when they started paying these people these hugely inflated salaries. To pay Tim Silva, what was it,
$800? They offered Silva $800,000 per fight. A man who got knocked out by Ray Marshall.
And a $200,000 win bonus.
Yes, and
that's insane.
You know, and I mean, it just Arlovsky $500,000 for his first fight. These were some inflated salaries comparative to what the UFC is paying.
Because Tim Silva in the UFC was getting $100,000 and $100,000, $100,000 to show up, $100,000 to win.
Yeah, and that shit's just fucking nuts. And these are both guys. Arlovsky got knocked out one punch. Basically got knocked out, not one punch, quickly by Brett Rogers, the Mohawk Rogers, and then. Like I slid that in there.
That's his nickname?
No, I just made that shit. It's the Grim Reaper. Oh my God, he's the Reaper. But anyway, and then Silva, who basically got just corn crushed by fucking Ray Mercer, who is definitely older than me.
And as Affliction saw the warning signs, they went to Strike Force and tried to strike a deal, no pun intended. And then Strike Force was like, "No, we're not doing having that," because they couldn't afford those salaries. Because you know those contracts are ridiculous.
Yeah. Affliction is probably the best thing for Affliction from a clothing apparel standpoint. Basically, they've lost all those heavy fucking contracts. They can get back to selling clothing. Sponsoring athletes, and now they've actually struck a deal with UFC. They're going to be one of the main sponsors, and they're going to go back to putting up T-shirts and doing what they did right. And that should be pretty good. The only thing that sucks for them is they've lost some relationship with these fighters that basically they said, "See you later."
Barnett's going to Japan to do wrestling, like WWE wrestling.
Right. Babalu got out. He's out.
Babalu got axed because he choked somebody out too long, and Dana didn't like it. So I mean, that would be, I think, a nice addition to come back. Vitor Belfort's got to be the one that everyone's got to be looking at and going.
Vitor Belfort is probably the best guy that could come out of Affliction who Dana White could sign. He could be a top-notch middleweight in the UFC.
With the exception of Fedor. But Fedor is going to be more challenging to sign, I have a feeling.
What do you think this does for Strikeforce?
They're now number 2, but
they just have a shallow roster.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they do have the female fighters, which I think I love the female fighters.
That's later this month.
But they still have a shallow roster. Anyway, what do you think?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens from here. I think the UFC obviously has a chokehold on MMA. I mean, you could even call it a monopoly if you want, but their next event is August 8th, which is a week from this coming Saturday.
August 8th, UFC 101. I know you guys heard George and I basically.
Philadelphia.
Philly. Yeah. Philly's the shit, though. Pennsylvania passed the gambling law. Now you got casinos in Philly. You got casino right by Heinz Field in Pittsburgh. So now that's a happening place. It's a good place to have a venue.
It'll be interesting. Will New York, do you think Madison Square Garden will be next?
I hope so, because I think having these fights somewhere on the East Coast so we don't get on a plane, have to fly our ass all the way to Vegas, like we do that every time anyway, because we just basically go to that shit.
I must have been asleep when we did that.
Anyway, UFC 101, the biggest thing is the kind of I guess you could say what?
Headlining main event.
Co-headlining main event.
One's for a belt, and one is, I think, to teach Anderson Silva a lesson.
Right.
And I've said that many times before, and I fully believe it, because let's face it, Anderson Silva's last 2 fights have been very drab, to say the least. And now they stuck him in the ring at 205 versus Forrest Griffin, who is nuts.
And then the other co-headliner is going to be Penn versus Florian, which I think is going to be a good fight.
That's going to be a great fight.
That's going to be a great fight. Real quick, George and I are going to talk about some of the undercard fights, which most of you people probably don't give a fuck about. But I know George gives a fuck about this boy.
Dude, this is my favorite fighter.
You know, it's funny, man. Tandem McCrory is going to fight Josh Howard. For all you people that don't know who Tandem McCrory is, he is the barn cat. That is your boy, Shorty. George loves this motherfucker because he's got the best fucking nickname out there, man.
And he looks like a stone cold nerd. Dude.
Yeah.
And if any of you people remember last time he fought, he came out there and Joe Rogan got on him about his entrance song, and he looks at him and goes, Dana White picks my intro song, so hopefully Tandem can have his own entrance song. But Tandem should win this, in my opinion, because the dude he's fighting is John Howard. John Howard is 5'7".
Yeah.
Tandem is 6'4".
6'4", 170. I mean, that shit is going to be like Manute Bol fighting Mini-Me. I mean, he's got to have a huge reach on him, you know. It's going to be
9 inches, you can imagine. I mean, unless John Howard looks like Grape Ape and his knuckles are dragging the ground when he walks in.
You know, brothers, man, I got some long monkey-ass arms. I'm like a spider monkey.
You're about the same height as him.
Yeah, he's about
5'7".
And my reach is 73 inches. Yeah, I'll stick the shit out of you. So that was the best for us. That's the most exciting undercard fight because George loves the barn cat. The other fight, we're going to start probably with Kendall Grove versus Ricardo Almeida.
Almeida?
You said Almeida, but if he says Almeida, his name is Almeida. If he says Almeida, every keyboard cowboy in fucking the United States of America and the rest of the world will fucking just.
I want to. How many fights does Kendall Grove have left?
Kendall Grove, I don't know, but he's 12-5.
But how many fights does he have left? Fighting at 185 pounds. That's because he started the fight at 205 and came down to 185.
He's gonna fight the big dog at 10-3. He's got a good record.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what Ricardo can do because I think if Ricardo beats Kendall, if Kendall Grove, in my opinion, loses at any point 2 in a row, he's got to go.
Right.
Sure, I don't know what that was.
Right.
Somebody's egging your house right now.
Right. We just heard this like crazy explosion. Anyway, the next fight, and I'm excited to see this because I kind of wonder what happened was Amir Sadala versus Johnny Hendricks. Now, I was wondering what happened to Amir Sadala after he did, tough. Yeah, not tough enough. Don't say tough enough, man, because you know the keyboard cowboy's going to jump in.
I'm going to say tough enough all day long.
The ultimate fighter, tough. The enough does not exist in the UFC. So the tough. He went through everybody. He looked great, and I saw him doing a lot of commentating, but he hadn't got back in the octagon. So this is going to be, I think, our first time we've seen him since the show, and he's going to be fighting Johnny Hendricks, who's undefeated as well. So at 5-0, that should be pretty good. Now that gets us to the big ones, the big headliners.
Anderson Silva versus Forrest Griffin. Who do you have?
I got Silva.
What round?
Third.
Method.
TKO.
Time.
2 minutes.
That's for all you UFC fantasy folks.
Yeah, I say third round TKO. This is one thing I think that will surprise people, and I said it to you really quick. A lot of people don't realize that Anderson Silva is a pretty big boy walking around. You know, when you saw Forrest Griffin fight Evans, it was you see how big of a 205 guy Forrest Griffin is. You're going to look and see Anderson Silva only an inch shorter than Forrest, and now fighting 20 pounds heavier. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he's going to not be sucking it down to 185 and be a middle. So you're going to see a bigger Anderson Silva, more like the one you saw sparring in The Ultimate Fighter with these guys. And I think people will be surprised. I mean, If he fights the way he fought the last 2 fights, it'll be a really good fight. If he fought prior to those fights, I think Anderson Silva will probably go through Forrest. I know a lot of those Forrest fans don't like to hear that.
I like Forrest. I've been really enjoying reading his book. His book is hilarious for you people out there who want something funny to read. I think it's just going to be depends on all. This fight solely depends on Anderson Silva because we know what we get with Forrest Griffin. Fight in and fight out. Forrest fights the same way every time.
He's got so much fucking heart.
Balls out.
He's going to fight balls out.
I think it's just all dependent on Anderson Silva and how he approaches this fight.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, headliner, BJ Penn versus Kenny Florian.
And you know what? BJ Penn at 155, in my opinion, you can't beat him.
Right.
I think he's gonna beat Kenny Florian.
I'm gonna tell you what. I like BJ Penn. You know I like BJ Penn. I tell you what. He better have his A game because if he doesn't, I think Kenny Florian will beat him. Kenny Florian is hungry.
I think this is another one where it's solely dependent on BJ Penn. Is it the one who's partying and hanging out at the island, or is it the one who's focused and has a point?
Carrying rocks in the ocean. BJ Penn's a wild dude, man. Yeah. I'm telling you what. But yeah, Kenny Florian, I just think he's this guy. Some of his losses came early in his career. He's definitely become a better fighter, and I think he's hungry. Wow. Michael Vick being reinstated. What do you think about that, real quick?
Just reinstate him. He doesn't need to serve a suspension anymore. The man spent 2 years in jail. He doesn't.
I
need
agree
to be
with that.
suspended
Him
for
coming back to week
bullshit.
6 is fucked up. Where do you think he'll end up?
UFL.
UFL?
Mm-hmm. And then he's going to end up in the NFL.
That's United Football League. And we're out. We'll catch you guys next week.
Check last week's show.
Later.